stop scrolling. My girlfriend wrote a eulogy for me while I was alive. That's the moment the floor tilted. I'd laughed at first when Maya, 29th, said the midnight calls from an unknown number were a prank. When she swore the roses on our doormat were a mix-up. When she shrugged off the burner phone discovered in her gym bag as a joke gone too far. But then my boss, Evelyn, 42, forwarded a thread titled Project Silence, where screenshots showed my name paired with dates, meeting rooms, and a script of apologies Maya would deliver after my accident. The word accident pulsed like a migraine. I stared at the text bubbles, her pet names, the intimate timestamps, the maps of where I ran at dawn. While my best friend Jonah, 34, set his palm on my shoulder and said, "We document everything." I said nothing. I just scrolled until I hit the message where Maya typed, "He trusts me." Trust is a glass. You don't notice the cracks until you drink and taste dust. By morning, the city felt like an accomplice, the streets too clean, the sky too blue, as if Karachi had rehearsed normalcy overnight. I replayed the thread on the rooftop, every ping echoing a little softer, until silence took shape and sat beside me. Maya's defense arrived in neat sentences. A prank for a social experiment, a joke that landed wrong, her friends egging her on. Each explanation chipped paint from a door that no longer opened. I remembered the burner phone's contact list, 2 numbers marked only with knife emojis, and a calendar invite for a surprise night run, placed exactly at the blind corner of Koranjai Road. People don't plan surprise kindness with maps and timestamps. I thought about the first time Maya traced the scar on my wrist from a bike crash and kissed it. Said she'd protect me from myself. Now her promises looked like stunt choreography. Jonah texted, "We meet, Evelyn. Noon. Bring everything." I pocketed the phone and felt it burn like a coal. Evelyn's office smelled like glass cleaner and consequence. She clicked through slides as if we were evaluating a vendor, not my survival. "Your girlfriend sent these to a private client," she said, tapping the trackpad. A message thread bloomed where Maya detailed my routines. Run times, coffee stops, the week I forgot to lock the back gate, followed by a rehearsed apology. He was reckless. I couldn't stop him. I asked who the client was. Evelyn looked at me the way surgeons look at families when they don't promise anything. "A competitor," she said, "and something else. The account name is Sable." Jonah muttered that names like that are chosen by people who want to be myths. My mouth went dry. I asked Evelyn why she didn't go to the police. "Screenshots are smoke," she said. "And smoke only matters when the room's already burning." Outside, sunlight slid down the skyscrapers like a blade. I felt it pass through me. Maya waited outside the building like a mistake left on the curb. She kept her voice low, pleading in the exhausted way liars do when they're out of adjectives. She said, Sable was a forum, a dare wall, people posting, pranks that mimicked crime scenes without crossing lines. She wanted to prove we were unbreakable, she said, that even if strangers pushed, we'd hold. "Then why the eulogy?" I asked. Her eyes shone but didn't blur. "Because grief makes people real," she whispered. I wanted to tell her that love does that job better. Jonah's jaw ticked. He filmed her with his phone, not to humiliate her, but to make memory obey. A delivery bike roared past, and both of us flinched, imagining blind corners. Maya put the locket in my hand. "Keep it," she said, "so you remember who I am." The metal was warm from her skin and still somehow cold. That evening, the group chat, our old university circle, lit up with laughing emojis under a clip of pranksters staging a fake arrest in satire. The caption read, "Sable's finest." My thumbs hovered, and then I dropped the bomb. Screenshots, dates, the apology script. The chat went mute so fast I thought the app crashed. Minutes later, An unknown number sent me a live location pin, pulsing from an overpass near the sea. Beneath it, "Come alone if you want the full joke." I forwarded it to Jonah and Evelyn, and still felt like I was stepping into a play where my role dies before the intermission. I told myself it would be the last time I gave Maya the benefit of doubt. Love is a gravity that makes even bad orbits feel inevitable. I strapped on my running shoes, pocketed the burner phone and the locket, and headed into the night that wanted a punchline. The overpass breathed salt and engine heat, a rib cage of concrete holding back the sea. I stepped into the cone of a street lamp and felt the sensation of being chosen. Wind pressing at my hoodie, phones watching from invisible hands. The live pin pulsed again and a second message arrived. "Stand on the yellow paint." A smear of caution line waited near a drain, where the city bled rainwater into the dark. I obeyed and listened. Somewhere, a drone's rotors whispered like gossip. My mind measured escape vectors, while my heart rehearsed apologies it didn't owe. Headlights swept the deck. A sedan drifted close enough to comb my knees with air, then straightened, laughter spilling from its windows. I tilted the burner toward the sound and saw the reflection of my own face, smaller, shakier, caught in someone else's framing. A third message. A skull emoji, then smile. I didn't. I lifted the locket, clenched it, and felt the hinge bite skin as if asking who or I believed. Jonah emerged from the stairwell like a footnote I'd hoped for. "You went coming alone," he said, already scanning shadows with a modesty of movement that suggested practice. He pointed at a gutter clamp where a black cube napped against rust. The GoPro's eye stared, unblinking, tasting our fear. We worked wordlessly. He palmed the camera and slipped it into a canvas pouch, then deadpanned to the darkness. "Your punchlines in safe hands." Tires hissed on wet road. Somewhere above, a bottle cracked and rolled. I told him about the drone and the skull emoji. He told me about a forum post he'd found. Sable hosts, proximity plays, scenes that flirt with harm, while lawyers polish the edges. "They'll never touch you," he said. "Just push you to fall." A text chimed. "Maya, please leave. I'm ending it." The plea sounded like a stage direction. I felt both fury and the old reflex to protect collide inside my ribs. The CE answered by throwing spray against the pillars like applause. Evelyn called while the city's pulse steadied. Her voice mixed boardroom calm with something human threadbare. She'd traced Sable through shell invoices to a boutique agency that once pitched my company narrative risk audits, reputation laundering with theatrics. "They lost the contract," she said, "and your name appears in a demo reel meant to demonstrate resilience tests." She sent an attachment. A storyboard mapping my routines to stress incidents, including a staged near collision on Korangi Road at dawn. I stared at the plan as if it were an X-ray of fate. "We can go to the police," Evelyn added, "but they'll ask for an injury. They like bruises, not drafts." I asked what they wanted. "A case study," she said. Jonah swore softly. Another ping, a private link, thumbnail of a video titled, "Eulogy, Take 3. Speaker Maya. My stomach tried to leave my body." Evelyn cautioned that the leak itself could be a trap, either to bait me into publicizing their spectacle, or to force me into silence by promising worse. I pressed play. Maya sat in our living room, hair brushed, sweater changed, locket missing from her throat, reading from a page that shook only when she inhaled. She spoke about my kindness like it had already been buried, about my temper as if it had cooled to ash. No tears, just precision. "I tried to warn him," she said, and the past tense verb cut. Then, at the end, she looked off camera and asked, "Is that too much?" A voice answered, pitch shifted, genderless, cleaner. "We don't want pity, we want plausibility." My chest turned winter. My chest turned winter. Jonah paused the frame and zoomed on a reflection in the TV. Someone in a hoodie hunched over a laptop. We scrubbed to the timestamp. Tomorrow, 5:42 a.m., the exact moment my route kisses the blind curve. I imagined the choreography, the car, the camera, the surge of strangers ready to react on cue. I texted Maya one sentence, "Meet me before dawn, no handlers." A reply came fast. "If I refuse, you'll go anyway. Plans are bones until breath animates them." We needed breath of our own. Jonah proposed a counterframe. We'd seed our cameras first, fix the narrative before theirs could decide who I was. Evelyn arranged a legal witness, off-duty, discreet, who'd meet us 2 blocks from the curve. I wrote a note and slipped the locket inside. "You asked who you are. Return this if your answer is mine." I wasn't sure if it was mercy or bait. We mapped approach vectors, exit routes, blind spots. Jonah's handwriting crawled across a damp napkin like river deltas. When the drone buzzed by again, lower this time, he waved cheerfully at it. A taunt that felt like courage, borrowed on credit. Another message arrived from Sable. "Final scene at dawn. Audience guaranteed." The word audience tasted metallic. I laced my shoes with ritual care, the way you might dress to meet a judge. Somewhere offshore, a ship hooted once, long, mournful, official, like a clock striking sentence. Dawn unbuttoned the night with a pale seam, and the city pretended not to watch. I jogged toward the curve, heart metronoming at a tempo too eager to be healthy. The lockets weighed a cool coin in my pocket. The air tasted of diesel and salt. Somewhere muezzin's call braided with gull cries, as if sky and sea were negotiating custody. We'd planted 2 button cams and a dash recorder in Jonah's borrowed hatchback, angled to kiss the blind spot. The legal witness waited a block away, shoes polished like punctuation. I kept scanning for errors. A mirror catching sun, a car that lingers 1 second too long, a stranger with hands in pockets when the wind is warm. Sable's messages had fallen into a theater hush. No skulls, no commands, just that promise of audience, the word swelling until it felt like a person. I wondered whether Maya would come with explanations, or arrive carrying silence like a weapon. My breath fogged once, surprising in this climate, and I realized it was fear leaving me in small, harmless clouds. If they wanted me smiling, I could offer something else. A face that refuses to be directed. Maya stepped from the pedestrian, cut through as if peeled from shadow, hair tied, navy sweater swapped for a gray windbreaker that made her look like a softer version of authority. She didn't wave. "I told them I was done," she said, and the past tense bruised again. Up close, her eyes were not wet or dry. They were working, measuring my angles like a tailor. She noticed my hoodie, the locket-shaped bulge, the way my weight sat on the balls of my feet, ready to pivot. "If I walk away now," she asked, "will you forgive me later?" I told her forgiveness isn't a seed you plant for harvest. It's a weather system. Maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't, and nobody earns the rain. She flinched, then set her jaw. A scooter buzzed past, then slowed too obviously. Mirrors tilted. She murmured without looking, "They're early." The street's hum rearranged itself into a pattern, and I felt the click of choreography sliding into place. We stood in the exhale before something decides to be a shout. The sedan appeared as if it had always been there, sliding from the curve with the confidence of a lion already rehearsed. A second camera drone purred overhead, brazen now, and a third angle winked from the scooter's tail. Jonah's voice pinged my earbud. Cam 1 rolling, witness en route, and I felt my spine lengthen, as if a verdict demanded posture. The sedan drifted close, too close, then decelerated with theatrical mercy, and I heard someone inside say, "Hold reaction. We want him framed against the barrier." Maya's hands floated up in a placating gesture that wasn't for me. Her face rearranged into an expression I'd seen once at a casting call for a charity at authenticity rehearsed until it behaved. Step back, I told her, but she didn't move, and I realized she was not a shield. She was the scene partner who makes the fall look inevitable. I pivoted sideways, angled my body toward Jonah's hatchback, and let the cameras catch me choosing the safer line. It was a refusal disguised as choreography, a small betrayal of the script they'd sold themselves. The scooter rider braked hard, kicked the stand, and announced to no one, "You good, bro," the universal cue for civilian footage. Another figure emerged from behind the barrier, hoodie up, gimbal in hand, face hidden by a mask printed with a smile that did not bend. I felt the scene tightening like a tourniquet. Final beat, someone in the sedan said, and a second vehicle crept from the far lane, establishing the narrow corridor where a stumble equals a headline. I looked at Maya and asked, "What's the safe word?" She blinked, surprised to be treated as if she'd ever had one. "Sable uses none," she said softly. "Only cutaways." I slipped the locket into her palm. "Return it when you stop reading my future in past tense." Then I raised my voice just enough. "Legal witness approaching." The hooded gimbal paused. A man in a tan blazer entered frame with an ID badge clipped to his pocket and the indifferent posture of paperwork. The spell loosened. The scene remembered liability. I watched fear change masks. First thrill, then complaint, then logistics. Jonah rolled up in the hatchback as if he were late to school, window down, grin shaped for disarming. "Morning audit," he said, flashing the dash recorder's red eye like a badge. The sedan's window lowered a crack. The pitch-shifted voice from the eulogy video spoke, now unprocessed, young and impatient. "We're within the law." The legal witness recited a tidy paragraph about harassment, reckless endangerment, and the evidentiary fun of synchronized angles. I felt a laugh start in my chest and refused to become sound. Victory this clean always smells a little like accident's cousin. Maya stepped back, her shoulders lowering in tiny increments, like a building unclenching after a tremor. For once, she didn't argue for intention over impact. "You were supposed to smile." The voice complained from the sedan. "I did," I said, "just not for you." The drone tilted, indecisive, then lifted toward the open sky. Cars resumed their ordinary hunger for distance. The morning insulted by our theater shrugged and kept brightening. Somewhere I imagined an upload queue emptying into disappointment. We regrouped in a parking garage that smelled like rain welded to concrete, the kind of limbo where decisions don't echo until you climb the ramp. Jonah dumped our footage onto his laptop while the legal witness drafted a statement with the blunt elegance of a traffic sign. My phone trembled with notifications, missed calls from unknowns, a string of private numbers that looked like teeth. Maya stood apart, palms wrapped around a paper cup she didn't sip, eyes fixed on the city, slit visible through the exit, as if horizon could absolve. "We should file now," the witness said, "before they re-edit reality." I imagined Sable in a room nearby, color grading my fear, trimming my hesitation to fit their runtime. Evelyn texted a contact at cybercrime and promised she was on her way. Her words felt solid, but the day had taught me that solidity could be a costume. When the GeoPro directory populated with timestamps in tidy rows, Jonah smiled the way surgeons do at clean margins. "We have angles they didn't plan for," he said. I wanted to believe that was the same as truth. Evelyn arrived with the posture of someone who understood how rooms could be tamed by certainty. She listened without interrupting, then made 2 calls that sounded like choreography for men in quiet offices. "Sable's a boutique, but elastic," she said, showing us a registration web that expanded through subcontractors and shell creatives. "They thrive on plausible deniability. Every part is small enough to be innocent." She scrolled to a familiar logo, our company's, on an old pitch deck stamped draft. For a second, The air thinned. "We never signed?" she added quickly. "But they kept our name in their reel." My throat tightened anyway, as if consent could be retrofitted. A new message thumped my screen. A contract excerpt with my initials forged into a voluntary stress audit. Fee paid by an anonymous sponsor. Jonah's jaw hard. That's not just a prank. That's paperwork. Maya whispered that the sponsor would be someone who loved the myth of me more than the man. Evelyn's eyes cooled. "Or someone who profits from the man breaking," she said. The garage hummed like a held breath. We took the stairwell for oxygen and privacy that didn't require a password. The city outside shone with that post-storm innocence that always feels like a lie. Maya stopped on a landing and faced me, the steel handrail dividing us like a legal clause. "I wanted to teach the algorithm to leave us alone," she said. Voice thin but steady. She described Sable's promise. Staged chaos to inoculate the audience that follows you without permission. A vaccine of scandal so you can live unfamed. It sounded like philosophy sold in a mall kiosk. "You asked for my trust," I said. "And then you outsourced it." She flinched, then extended the locket back to me. A small orbit closing. "If there's a reckoning, let it be with me," she whispered. "Not your body on a road." I wanted to think that was courage and not self-preservation. Jonah called from below that cybercrime would take the complaint if we brought a hard drive and one brave face. "I can be the face," Maya said. I wondered how many faces she had rehearsed for days like this. At the cybercrime desk, the officer read our statement with the patience of someone trained to doubt the exciting parts. We layered footage, timestamps, metadata, and a witness' steady handwriting. The officer nodded, then asked a question that peeled paint from my certainty. "Who benefits if you withdraw?" The list ran itself. Sable's clients, my competitor, anyone who prefers attention to be a commodity rather than consent. Evelyn added that the forged voluntary audit contract could anchor a fraud case, but only if we avoided turning this into content first. The irony tasted bitter. The safest way to survive spectacle is to starve it. Maya volunteered her messages, and the raw eulogy takes. The room chilled as the officer watched her deliver my death with the clarity of a training video. "Intention?" he asked. "Cowardice dressed as design," she answered. For the first time, I believe she understood the difference. He assigned a case number, advised silence, and promised a review team that makes lies bruise. I exhaled and felt the day settle into the slow machinery of consequence. By dusk, we returned to the apartment that now felt like a set, rebuilt after a fire. Same walls, altered air. Jonah cooked noodles with the grim devotion of a medic. Evelyn perched at the counter building a timeline that braided law with narrative. The witness signed copies and slipped out with a nod that blessed and warned. I sat on the floor, back to the couch, locket cool in my palm, and let the day replay until it lost its appetite. A final message arrived from an unlisted email. A single sentence, resilience confirmed, case study retired, followed by a link that led to nothing. Maya read it and sagged as if gravity had been postponed all day and just remembered her. "They'll pivot," Jonah said, "into someone else's morning." I looked at the locket and wondered if forgiveness is less a weather system and more a tide. Predictable, but only if you respect the moon. I told Maya she could stay on the couch. She said she'd already started packing. The apartment listened without comment. Outside, the city rehearsed for tomorrow. And for once, we didn't. Night didn't fall so much as fold, tucking the city into creases where secrets could nap. Sleep skittered around the apartment like a wary cat. It never settled. I sat with the locket open, its tiny hinge a bright crescent, and reread the day's receipts. The drones, the staged corridor, the complaint stamped with an emblem that promised consequence while time yawned. Maya moved softly, packing in edits, hoodie, toiletries, the book I pretended to have finished. "I check into a hotel near my mother," she said, like a voiceover remembering lines. I nodded because I had run out of verbs. Then Jonah texted a screenshot. The forged voluntary stress audit cited an escrow transaction routed through a marketing firm with a familiar address, 2 floors below my office. I felt the floor tilt, not with shock, but with alignment. Evelyn, looping in, wrote, "If it's who I think they want run, they'll rationalize." I closed the locket. "Tomorrow we knock," I told the room. Maya paused at the door, wanting a benediction I could not give. The city exhaled a siren that faded like a promise keeping its distance. Morning found us armored in ordinary clothes, because nothing unsettles a villain like business casual. The elevator to our building's 6th floor mirrored us into versions we could interrogate. I watched my own jaw practice neutrality. The marketing firm's door opened onto a lobby perfumed with citrus and budget confidence. A receptionist smiled with the unconvincing brightness of someone punished for nuance. Then he arrived. Karim Dastor, 48, male, Parsi, my company's regional growth head, immaculate in a navy suit that fit like concession. He recognized me and, worse, recognized the situation. "Let's use a small room," he said. "Hospitality as anesthesia." Inside, Karim explained the sponsor line with the calm of a man who believes in the syllabus of harm reduction. "Resilience pilots," he called them, designed to surface vulnerabilities before the market does. He even nodded toward Maya as if gratitude were appropriate. "You were never in danger," he added, the sentence a museum of arrogance. I tasted metal, the flavor of bit lips, and asked who approved it. "Nobody," he said cheerfully. Which is how innovation survives. Evelyn arrived halfway through Karim's monologue about brand anti-fragility and made the air colder by simply existing. She placed our complaint file on the table like a teacher setting down an exam key and let silence count to 5. "You bought a performance," she said to Karim, and mislabeled it compliance. He attempted the smile that makes lesser people agree with you. It slid off her. "A pilot with no consent is not a pilot," she went on. "It's a collision test where the car is a person." Karim tried to hand-wave with disclaimers about subcontractors and legal vetting, but the forged signature landed like a gavel. Jonah slid the escrow trail across the screen, each hop annotated. Maya added her own messages, voice steady as if at a confession kiosk. I watched Karim's jaw cycle through outrage, negotiation, and finally math. The calculus of risk when a story escapes your slide deck. "We can settle," he said, already calculating. "How to price my humiliation." Evelyn didn't blink. "We can prosecute," she replied. For once, math remembered it is subject to gravity. Karim pivoted to moral geometry. He spoke of markets as weather and of my life as a balcony that needed stress testing before hosting guests. He said, "The eulogy videos were exposure therapy for audiences addicted to outrage, as if healing could be imposed like a software update." I heard the clatter of liability trying to camouflage itself as ethics. "Who wrote the apology script?" I asked. Karim hesitated, then admitted Sable's copy-led. Screen name Viatic. Compiled it from audience sentiment models. A phrase that made me want a shower. Evelyn pressed. "Did he know about the overpass choreography?" He claimed surprise. His face did not. The receptionist knocked, sliding in with tea that arrived without being ordered. Politeness weaponized into delay. I realized the true cruelty wasn't the near collision. It was the certainty with which these people believed they could narrate my grief better than I could live my days. "You said I wasn't in danger," I told Karim. "You were," he said brightly. "To your brand." The room temperature dropped another 2 degrees, or maybe that was me learning a new kind of cold. When the door finally shut behind Karim, It felt less like victory than the removal of a heavy prop no longer needed for the scene. Evelyn laid out next steps with the cadence of a metronome. Evidence escrowed, press blackout advised, civil action drafted, criminal referral supplemented by the forged contract. Jonah exhaled a laugh that was really a pressure valve. Maya lingered by the glass, her reflection trying to negotiate with her face. "I will testify," she said, then added, "and I will not ask you for anything." The locket lay on the table between us like an artifact recovered from a ship that almost didn't make harbor. I told her that love had been real, and harm had been realer, and both truths needed separate rooms. She nodded, a small acceptance that sounded like fabric exhaling. Outside, the office buzz reasserted itself. Printers, footsteps, the minor symphony of people who thought today was about campaigns. We stepped into the corridor together and parted without choreography. No drones, no skull emojis, only the honest, ordinary ache of after. The day finally began. Silence moved in like a new roomette. Polite at first, then rearranging furniture while I slept. Days acquired a crisp, bureaucratic rhythm. Evidence mirrored, affidavits notarized, calls scheduled at hours that used to belong to running. I learned the geometry of aftermath, how it requires right angles and careful labels so it doesn't spill. Strangers at work pretended not to know, which is its own kind of knowing. Kareen's office door stayed closed, a glossy apology pinned to the intranet like a bandage over steel. At night, I kept catching my reflection as if it were an extra waiting to be called, the person who almost became a case study. Jonah kept texting jokes too stupid to be anything but love. Evelyn's messages, precise as sutures, stitch time. Court filing acknowledged. Forensic report clean, hold the line. Maya sent nothing, which felt fair and also like a room with lights off. I could navigate it from memory, but I didn't. I ran new routes at dawn, avoiding the curve, teaching my feet to trust corners again. Somewhere behind the city's noise, a clock counted not seconds but distance from spectacle, and I was surprised by how quietly mercy can measure. On the third morning, a brown envelope greeted my doormat with bureaucratic politeness. Inside, discovery materials, Sable's invoices, anonymized chat transcripts, a redacted roster that still sang its melody of complicity. I read the language of people who confuse clever with kind. Plausibility threshold met. One line cheered. Another suggested calibrated fright without bodily harm, as if ethics were a dimmer switch. A footnote referenced client KD with a smiley that felt like a bruise, painted yellow. I caught myself searching the text for the sentence that would absolve Maya and found only her labor, documented in timestamps and revisions, the way good intentions often leave fingerprints anyway. The legal witness had annotated the packet with blue ink, quiet arrows pointing to the hinge points, dates, signatures, invoices that moved like shell cups swapping a pea. I brewed tea that tasted of paper. The kettle's whistle felt too dramatic for my kitchen, and yet it matched the day. Ordinary objects, struggling to behave while language tried to make harm polite. I stacked the pages, breathed like a swimmer at a pool's edge, and dialed Evelyn. We met at Evelyn's office where the glass does that trick of reminding you transparency is also a mirror. She mapped the path ahead with fine-tipped pens, each color a future that could still change its mind. Civil action would press the bruise for damages. Criminal complaint, now fat with paperwork, would teach the bruise to speak. Jonah, who translates dread into logistics, built a calendar with court dates, disclosures, nights we would let ourselves remember. Joy on purpose. "You need a statement," Evelyn said to me, "one that refuses both vengeance and spin." I nodded, thinking of how easily a sentence can become a trap if you let rage hold the pen. She proposed restitution funds diverted to safety training for freelancers and a public commitment from my company to ban Resilience pilots. I imagined Karim hearing those words like a foreign language he almost understood. Outside, clouds stacked like unfiled folders, promising rain if not relief. For an hour, I felt something nearing peace, less a feeling than a design, a blueprint that admitted windows. Then my phone lit with an unsaved number and a single line. Heard you, like cutaways. The message resolved into a link, unlisted teeth, bared behind a polite URL. Jonah mirrored my screen to the room. Evelyn's jaw tightened, the way a building braces before wind. The video opened with a countdown, and then, not me, but a montage of others. A woman stepping back from a staged bus lurch, a man skidding to avoid a planted spill of marbles, a teen frozen by a fake siren that whispered his name. Proximity plays, the caption chirped. Training society to be kinder by rehearsing harm. I felt my stomach recalculate gravity. Then, the hook. Maya, early draft hair, reading from a page labeled Template B. Accountable grief. Coaching a sob she never performs in the final cut. Sable had kept their bloopers. The cruelty wasn't the nearness of injury. It was the intimacy of rehearsal. The last second showed Karim's initials in an approval column, the smiley promoted to a star. Evelyn paused and took a long breath that sounded like a verdict choosing shoes. This reframes damages, she said. Jonah forwarded the file to our case vault, then added, almost casually, "You don't have to watch again." I believed him and didn't. Rain finally kept its promise, and the city smelled like a reset button. I walked without destination until the sea argued its way into view, a gray sheet hammered by patient hands. The curve was a kilometer behind me, yet my pulse rose as if memory wore running shoes. I sat on a low wall and opened the locket, not to worship a symbol but to measure distance. Forgiveness, I discovered, is less a tide than a harbor. You can choose to dock, but you still watch the weather. I recorded the statement Evelyn asked for, speaking it into my phone's notes app with the steadiness of a bridge. I said I wanted accountability that didn't cosplay revenge. I said performance without consent is theft. I said harm can be clever and still be harm. I thanked Jonah for the jokes, Evelyn for the spine, the witness for his quiet grammar, and Maya for telling the worst truth. That intention starves when it isn't fed by care. When I finished, the rain thinned to mist, and the horizon returned in increments. A gull screamed like comic relief coming in too early, which felt right for my life. I stood, pocketed the locket, and started home. The courtroom was less a theater than a factory where words are pressed into shapes that can carry weight. I sat behind counsel, locket a cool coin in my pocket, while the clerk read case numbers that sounded like coordinates back to the overpass. Karim occupied the defendant's bench with the serenity of a man who thinks procedure is a cushion. Sable's counsel radiated boutique confidence, all velvet gloves over steel filings. Evelyn spoke with a clarity that didn't require thunder, building our story from angles and timestamps until it resembled a thing that could not be kicked over. The legal witness testified like a metronome in human clothes. When my turn came, I didn't give them tragedy. I gave them logistics. Where the car was, where my body chose to be, how consent is not a tone but a signature. I did not look at Maya when she was called and said, "I did this," because we both deserve to hear it without choreography. The judge's face never moved, which is how justice keeps its blood pressure. Still, when he said the words, "probable cause," I felt the room's oxygen learn my name again. By afternoon, my company released a statement that didn't sound like a statement so much as a redirection of gravity. No more resilience pilots. Immediate suspension of Karim. Independent audit shaped by people who know harm is not a metaphor. The intranet lit with truths whispered as policy. Jonah sent a string of fireworks emojis and then a photo of noodles, as if to insist normalcy can be plated. I walked the length of the office's atrium where sunlight behaves like law, and thought about how institutions only change when the cost of pretending not to change is first. Kareem's door stood open, desk stripped to polite emptiness. I felt no victory, only a valve releasing pressure from somewhere behind my ribs. Evelyn met me by the elevators and said we could still choose quiet, settle for funds that make amends without buying silence. I told her I didn't want silence. I wanted shape. Guidelines that outlive our names. She nodded, and for once I registered the fatigue fringing her precision. Outside, the city's traffic negotiated mercy at every intersection, which is to say, it kept moving. We met at a small park where jacaranda blossoms performed a soft riot over the path, color so extravagant it made apologies feel underfunded. Maya arrived in the gray windbreaker, hair pulled back as if to keep her face from changing its mind. She didn't ask for adjectives. She offered nouns: responsibility, restitution, distance. I thought staging fear would make us proof against it, she said, voice steady like a hand at fevered forehead. I told her I had learned a different lesson, that fear doesn't need rehearsals and love hates scripts. She placed an envelope on the bench, her statement, her cut of Sable's payment returned, a letter to the women in the montage teaching them to say no louder. I put the locket between us and let both of us watch it decide. Keep it, I said finally, as evidence that we survived something and chose not to repeat it. She blinked, not from tears, but from a recalibration of horizon. We did not hug. We sat with the violet rain falling around ankles and let goodbye happen like weather. Earned, even when it hurts. Jonah insisted on a celebratory run that wasn't about speed, but about reclaiming the grammar of streets. We picked a route stitched with small mercies, a bakery that opens before the sun remembers its duties, a stray dog that pretends not to like us, a corner where the light always chooses us first. He talked about nothing important on purpose, stories with no villains, jokes that ask nothing of the body but laughter. My breath learned to be a metronome again instead of a fire alarm. We paused on a footbridge and watched buses heave their long patience across the city. Somewhere a driver sang, and whether it was faith or radio didn't matter. You know, Jonah said, the internet will want a tidy ending. I told him the ending is this: 2 men alive on a morning with no drones, their steps making quiet treaties with concrete. He bumped my shoulder like punctuation. The sun lifted its yellow verdict. I felt it land without objection. For the first time in weeks, the horizon wasn't a suspect. It was an invitation. That night, I set my phone on the table and recorded one last message. Not content, just a ledger of gratitude and boundaries. I spoke the line I'd wanted to bury. She claimed it was a prank. No one was laughing when I showed the messages. Then let the silence after it do the work words can't. I said we'd built a pathway for others, a policy, a case, a refusal to be filmed without consent, and that none of it required me to be a martyr. I thanked the city for holding me in place even when certain corners tried to throw me off, and I thanked myself for choosing the safer line. I saved the file without posting. A private archive against the day memory insists on edits. The locket lay on the shelf beside my keys, a steady glint that didn't ask to be opened. Outside, rain rehearsed on the rooftops, a percussion section warming up for weather. I turned off the light and found the room still friendly in the dark. Sleep arrived like a colleague who finally learned my name and decided to stay.